Hey family, welcome back to Black Queen Revenge. We've got a unique story for you today, full of emotion and real-life drama. If you love these stories, please like, comment, subscribe, and share your ideas for future videos. So, let's begin. The rain wasn't just falling on Atlanta. It was a biblical deluge, hammering the manicured lawns of the Sterling Heights estate with a vengeance that felt personal. Inside the cavernous drawing room, the air was just as suffocating, thick with the cloying scent of lilies and unspoken greed. Ilara Vance stood by the floor-to-ceiling window, her reflection a ghost in the darkened glass. The simple black dress she wore felt like a borrowed skin, itchy and ill-fitting. 7 days. 7 days since they'd lowered Cale, her husband of 5 years, into the Georgia clay. The grief was a raw, open wound, but it was being steadily poisoned by another, more insidious feeling: dread. "He's late," snapped her mother-in-law, Imogen, from a gilded armchair. She tapped a perfectly manicured nail against its carved arm. "The lawyer. Punctuality is the courtesy of kings, and we are paying him a king's ransom." "We're not paying him, Mother," corrected Serafina, Ilara's sister-in-law, examining her own reflection in a polished silver tray. "The estate is, which, as of about, 20 minutes from now, will be us." Ilara didn't turn. She could see them in the window's reflection: Imogen, a hawk in Chanel, and Serafina, her viper offspring in Valentino. They were dressed for a coronation, not a mourning. Ilara had always been the outsider, the quiet, bookish archivist Cale had inexplicably brought into their world of old money and sharp edges. She'd never learned to play their games, and now, as Cale's final act unfolded, she feared she was about to be checkmated. The heavy oak door swung open. Mr. Thorne, Cale's personal attorney, entered. He was a man carved from gray flannel and regret, his briefcase looking like it contained lead weights instead of paper. "My apologies for the delay," he said, his voice a dry rustle. "The traffic from the city is abominable." "Let's dispense with the niceties, Thorne," Imogen said, waving a dismissive hand. "Read it." Mr. Thorne settled into the chair opposite them, avoiding Ilara's eyes. That single avoidance sent a crack of pure ice down her spine. He unlatched the briefcase with a series of precise clicks that echoed in the silent room. The will was a masterpiece of legal pomp, full of whereases and heretofores. Ilara's mind drifted, clinging to memories of Cale. His laugh, a warm, rumbling sound that seemed to start in his boots. The way his eyes would crinkle when he found her lost in some old manuscript in the library. The last 6 months, though, they had been different. He'd become withdrawn, haunted. Business trips had grown longer, more frequent. When she'd asked, he'd just taken her face in his hands, his own etched with a fatigue no sleep could cure. "Trust me, Ilara. No matter what happens or what you hear, please, just trust that I'm trying to protect you." She'd thought he meant from the illness the doctors had just diagnosed, the aggressive, terminal illness he'd kept secret from his family until the end. Now she wasn't so sure. "To my beloved mother, Imogen Vance, I leave my controlling shares in Vance Aeronautics, along with the primary residence, Sterling Heights, and its contents," Mr. Thorne read, his tone flat. A sharp, triumphant sigh escaped Imogen. Serafina leaned forward, her eyes gleaming. "To my sister, Serafina Vance, I bequeath my portfolio of commercial real estate holdings, including the Lux Tower penthouse and the entirety of my liquid assets held in domestic accounts." Serafina's hand flew to her mouth, a squeal of delight barely contained. She shot Ilara a look of pure, unadulterated triumph. Ilara's heart was a trapped bird against her ribs. She felt dizzy. She'd expected nothing grand, but to be omitted entirely? The humiliation was a physical burn across her cheeks. "Cale, how could you?" Mr. Thorne cleared his throat, the sound like gravel. "And finally, to my wife, Ilara Vance." The room held its breath.
I leave the property known as Havenwood, a dwelling located in the township of Iron Ridge, Vermont. The deed and particulars are attached." Silence. Then Serafina snorted. It was an ugly, involuntary sound. "Havenwood?" she snorted. "That's the hunting cabin? The one Grandpa Vance used? The one that's probably fallen into the gully by now?" Imogen's lips curled into a smile of exquisite cruelty. Vermont. In winter. How quaint. She turned her gaze on Alara, and it was like being stripped bare and left in the snow. "It seems my son finally came to his senses about your place in this family." The laughter started then, not loud guffaws, but a low, shared chuckle of contempt between mother and daughter. It was worse than shouting. It dismissed her, erased her. Ilara's vision blurred with hot tears of shame and betrayal, so profound it stole the air from her lungs. Mr. Thorne was hurriedly packing his papers. "The will stipulates that all personal debts and final expenses have been settled from Mr. Vance's remaining funds. There is no residual balance. My duties are complete." He practically fled, his shoes whispering on the parquet. The door boomed shut. Through the drumming rain and the leaded glass, Ilara saw the blurred shapes of Imogen and Serafina, their heads thrown back in silent laughter. Numb, soaked to the skin in seconds, Ilara crawled to the duffel bag, hauling its sodden weight from the water. She had nothing. No money beyond a few crumpled dollars in her pocket, no family, no friends who would dare cross Imogen Vance. The slip of paper Mr. Thorne had pressed into her hand as he left, the address in Iron Ridge, was her only lifeline, disintegrating in the rain. Fueled by a desperate survivalist rage, she walked for miles until she reached a gas station. Using her last cash, she bought a bus ticket north. The journey was a blur of grinding gears, stale air, and the hollow echo of Cale's last words, "Trust me." Iron Ridge, Vermont was not a town. It was a forgotten comma in a sentence written by glaciers. The bus dropped her at a crossroads, where the only sign was so faded it just read, "Nrid." The driver's parting words were, "Good luck, miss. Ain't nothing up that road but ghosts and regrets." The road to Havenwood was a washed-out track through dense, skeletal pine forests. The duffel strap cut into her shoulder, the bag growing heavier with every step as sleet began to mix with the rain. By the time she saw the shape of the cabin through the trees, the sky was the color of bruised iron, and twilight was bleeding into night. Havenwood was a monument to decay. The roof sagged like a tired spine. One whole side of the wraparound porch had collapsed into the rocky soil below. Every window was a dark blank eye, some shattered. It wasn't a cabin, it was a carcass. Ilara sank onto the rotten steps, the last of her strength gone. This was it. This was what Cale's love had boiled down to, a ruin in the wilderness. The betrayal was complete, a final, cruel joke. She was so tired, so cold, she considered just lying down in the freezing mud and letting the cold take her. As her head drooped, a glint of white in the encroaching darkness caught her eye. There, nestled in the shelter of the broken porch, sheltered by a sagging eave, was a terracotta pot, and in it, defying the season and the despair, bloomed a single, perfect white gardenia. Its fragrance, sweet and hauntingly out of place, cut through the scent of rot and damp earth. Gardenias. Her heart stuttered. A memory, sharp and clear, their first anniversary. Cale, notoriously bad with flowers, had presented her with a potted gardenia. "They're fussy," he'd said, grinning, "need just the right light, the right temperature. Like you, beautiful and complex. And," he'd added, tapping the pot, "they say the scent is a memory trigger, so whenever you smell it, you'll think of this, of me promising to always find a way back to you." Another memory, later, watching an old heist movie. "If I ever need to hide something precious," Cale had mused, "I'd put it under something beautiful and alive, something only you would associate with me. A rose? Too common. A gardenia." Ilara lunged for the pot. It was frozen to the warped floorboards. She scrabbled at it, breaking a nail, her breath coming in ragged gasps. With a final wrench, it came free. Underneath, shielded from the elements, was a small, waterproof metal lockbox, and taped to its lid, a key. This was no coincidence. This was a signpost. Hands trembling violently, she unlocked the box. Inside, nestled on a bed of velvet, was not a treasure, but another key. This one was large, heavy, and ornate, made of tarnished brass, and with it, a single, typewritten note on expensive linen paper. For the study. Look to the bridge. The study. She grabbed her duffel and pushed open the front door, which groaned in protest. The interior was a tomb, icy, dark, smelling of mold and animal musk. She used her phone's dying flashlight, the beam cutting through the blackness. She found the study at the back of the cabin. Unlike the rest of the ruin, the door was solid, its lock shiny and new. The brass key slid in smoothly. The room beyond was a time capsule, a massive oak desk, a leather chair, shelves not with books, but with neatly labeled binders. The air still held a faint, familiar trace of Cale's sandalwood cologne and pipe tobacco. And on the wall behind the desk, dominating the room, was a painting. It was a dramatic, stormy depiction of the Tower Bridge in London, the Thames churning beneath it, the city shrouded in fog and rain. It was utterly out of place in a Vermont hunting cabin. Look to the bridge. She approached, her heart hammering. She pressed the edges of the heavy frame. Nothing. She ran her fingers over the painted surface, over the dark waters, the stone towers. Her finger caught on a slight ridge on one of the bridge's support pillars, a painted pillar. On impulse, she pressed it. A soft click came from behind the canvas. The entire painting swung inward on hidden hinges, revealing a wall safe with a digital keypad. Ilara's breath fogged in the freezing air. Trust me. The code. It had to be meaningful. She tried his birthday. Error. Hers. Error. Their wedding date. The keypad beeped, a green light flashed, and the safe door unbolted with a satisfying thunk. Inside was not a stack of bonds or diamonds she half expected, but 3 objects: a sealed bottle of water, a packet of high-energy ration bars, and a slim, cream-colored envelope. A bitter laugh escaped her. Provisions! He knew she'd arrive desperate and exhausted. He planned for it. She tore open the envelope. A first-class, one-way ticket fell into her palm, Atlanta to London Heathrow, in her name. Departure time, 9:15 a.m., tomorrow. At that precise moment, her phone, its flashlight still on, chimed with a new message. The sender was an international number. Message received at 4:02 a.m. local time. Your flight is confirmed. Your husband's final instructions are in motion. Come to the airport. Bring only your passport in this ticket. Destroy this phone after reading. All is arranged. We await you in London. The message vanished from the screen as if it had never been there. Ilara stood in the freezing dark study, the ticket in one hand, her dead phone in the other. This wasn't an inheritance, it was an extraction. Cale hadn't betrayed her, he had engineered a desperate, convoluted escape. But from what? Imogen and Serafina were vile, but they weren't international criminals. What had Cale been involved in? The fear was now laced with a terrifying thrill. He had gone to extraordinary lengths, painting her as a worthless cast-off to make her disappear. He used his own family's cruelty as a weapon to propel her out. There was no choice. Staying here meant death by exposure or a return to Atlanta and a fate she couldn't imagine. London was a mystery, but it was a path he had laid. She ate one of the ration bars, drank some water, and changed into the least damp clothes from her duffel. As the first gray light of dawn filtered through the dirty study window, she took a last look around. She left the duffel bag, the symbol of her old life, in the middle of the floor. She had the ticket, her passport, and the clothes on her back. She followed the treacherous road back to the crossroads, her mind racing. In the dim morning light, she saw an old truck idling by the faded sign. The grizzled driver rolled down his window. "Headed to the city, miss? You look like you've had a night of it." It wasn't a question. It was part of the plan. The Atlanta airport was a jarring universe of light and noise. Ilara, in her wrinkled, damp clothes, her hair a wild mess, moved through the gleaming terminals like a phantom. She felt every security guard's eye on her. A woman with no luggage, a one-way first-class ticket, and the hollow-eyed look of a refugee.
At the airline's exclusive check-in desk, the agent's polished smile froze. "One way to London, madam? Any checked baggage?" "No," Ilara whispered, sliding her passport and the rumpled ticket across the counter. The agent typed, her frown deepening. She picked up a phone, spoke in low, urgent tones. Ilara's blood ran cold. Had it been a trick? Was she about to be arrested? A supervisor appeared, a man with the calm eyes of a former soldier. He glanced at the ticket, at Ilara, and then gave a small, almost imperceptible nod to the agent. "Everything is in order, Mrs. Vance," he said lowly. "Your husband's arrangements are quite comprehensive. Here is your boarding pass. The Concord Room Lounge is through there. Your flight boards in 1 hour." The first-class cabin was a surreal capsule of silence and luxury. As the plane powered down the runway and lifted into the sky, leaving Atlanta and the life she knew shrinking below, Ilara felt a seismic shift within her. The betrayed wife was gone. In her seat was a woman on a mission, propelled by a dead man's secrets, heading into a gale of unknown peril. Heathrow was a ballet of controlled chaos. Ilara moved through passport control in a daze, the stamp in her passport a definitive end to one chapter. She exited into the bustling arrivals hall, a sea of faces and signs. And then she sought it. A man, tall and austere, with silver hair swept back from a severe face, stood apart from the crowd. He held no sign, but his gaze was fixed on her. He wore an impeccably tailored charcoal coat, and in his gloved hand was a small, discreet tablet. As she drew closer, she saw 2 words on the screen in elegant script: Ilara Vance. She stopped before him. "I'm Ilara Vance." He gave a slight, formal bow. "Madam, I am Alistair Finch. I served as your husband's confidential agent here in London." His eyes, a pale, penetrating blue, scanned her face, taking in her exhaustion and her resolve. He said, "Welcome," his voice like dry parchment. "The game is afoot." He led her not to the taxi rank, but to a private elevator that descended to an underground garage. A silent chauffeur held the door of a Bentley Bentayga. As the car glided into the London traffic, Finch spoke without looking at her. "Your husband was not the man you or anyone in Atlanta believed him to be. Vance Aeronautics was a facade, a profitable one, but a facade nonetheless. His true work, his legacy, and the considerable fortune it generated was managed through a separate entity, Elysian Ventures, and it is entirely yours." Ilara stared at him. His true work? Acquisitions, of a very specific kind. Finch finally turned his gaze at her. He recovered lost things: stolen art, looted antiquities, plundered cultural heritage. He operated in the shadows, using his business as cover, working with a network of informants, forgers, and occasionally less savory individuals. He was very good at it, and in doing so, he made powerful enemies. Enemies? Who? A syndicate. They call themselves the Curators. They believe the world's treasures belong in the hands of the powerful, not museums or nations. Cale intercepted several of their most prized shipments. He wasn't just stealing from them, he was humiliating them. He knew his illness gave him a deadline.
His final 6 months were spent not just on treatment, but on a single grand operation, locating and acquiring the Arachne Codex, a legendary pre-Christian text on metallurgy and engineering said to contain secrets lost to history. The curators had traced it to a private collection in Dubai. Cale got there first. "Where is it?" Ilara asked, her mind reeling. "That is the question," Finch said softly. He secured it, but he knew he couldn't bring it home. He also knew the curators would be watching his family, his assets, his widow. The will you heard was a masterpiece of misdirection. By disinheriting you so publicly, by making you a pitiable figure cast out with nothing, he made you invisible to them. They are watching Imogen and Serafina, waiting for them to slip, to try and sell something that shouldn't be on the market. They are not watching a heartbroken widow on a plane to London. The car pulled up in front of a stunning modern townhouse in Mayfair. "This is yours," Finch said. "The deeds are in the study, along with the first clue." The townhouse was the antithesis of the Vermont cabin, all clean lines, muted tones, and serene luxury. In the study, on a desk, lay a single object beside a stack of legal documents, an antique magnifying glass, its handle wrapped in worn leather. Taped to it was a note in Cale's familiar, slashing handwriting. "My dearest Ilara, if you are here, you trusted me, and you found the gardenia. Thank you. The glass is the first key. Look for the web. Finch will guide you. I'm so sorry for the journey. Remember the bridge. Always. K." Finch appeared in the doorway. The painting in Vermont, the Tower Bridge, it's not just a symbol, it's a location. Cale kept a private storage facility in a converted warehouse near Shad Tams, in the shadow of the bridge. The unit is in your name. The magnifying glass is part of the security mechanism. "What's in the unit?" Galara asked, her voice steady now. "We believe," Finch said, "the Arachne Codex, and possibly the trap Cale set for the curators. He knew they'd eventually find it. He intended for them to walk into a snare of his own devising. But he died before he could finish. It's why he needed you here. You are the final piece, Ilara. You are the trigger." The weight of it settled on her, immense and terrifying. She wasn't just an heir. She was a pawn moved into the endgame of a war she never knew was being waged. The betrayal she'd felt in Atlanta was gone, replaced by the chilling understanding of the danger Cale had lived with, and the even greater danger he had left for her to face. She picked up the magnifying glass. It felt heavy, solid. She looked at Finch. "When do we start?" He allowed himself a small, grim smile. "Now, for the curators are not idle. Our sources indicate they have a man in the city. They've grown impatient, and they are starting to ask questions about the widow who vanished from Atlanta and never arrived in Vermont." 6 days later, the trap in Atlanta sprung. Imogen and Serafina, having spent a week drowning in champagne and spite, hosted a gala at Sterling Heights to cement their new status. The party was in full swing when a different group of uninvited guests arrived. Not bankers, but men in nondescript suits with hard eyes and federal badges.
"Imogen Vance, Serafina Vance, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, international money laundering, and violations of the National Stolen Properties Act." The charges were a labyrinthine web Cale had woven in his final months, funneling dirty money from the curator's shell companies through Vance Aeronautics. By inheriting the company, they had inherited the crime. As agents led them out in handcuffs, past their horrified phone-recording guests, Serafina screamed, "This is her fault! Ilara's! She set us up!" But Ilara was already far away, standing with Alistair Finch in a cold, concrete warehouse unit under the echoing rumble of London's Tower Bridge. Before them, opened with the magnifying glass and a series of codes from Cale's diaries, was a crate. Inside, nestled in custom-cut foam, was a battered ancient leather folio, the Arachne Codex. And beside it,
a smaller box. Inside that box was a simple, modern USB drive. Finch plugged it into a secure laptop. A video file opened. Cale again, but now he was in this very warehouse, looking gaunt but fierce. Alara, if you're seeing this, you're in London, you're with Finch, and you're holding the key to bringing down a very ugly network. The drive contains encrypted transaction records, names, shipment routes, everything I gathered on the curators. Finch knows how to use it. Deliver it to the authorities here, and it will start a chain reaction that will reach across the globe. He paused, his expression softening. I used our love as a disguise. I made you look like the one thing they'd never suspect, a victim. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. Please forgive me. Now, be the hunter I know you are. I love you. The screen went black. Alara looked from the ancient codex to the modern drive, the two treasures her husband had died for. One was a relic of the past, the other a weapon for the future. She closed the crate and turned to Finch. The grief was still there, a constant ache, but it was now fused with a steely purpose. The betrayed wife was gone. The woman who remained, standing in the shadow of the bridge her husband had chosen as their signpost, was something else entirely, an heiress to a secret war and the keeper of a flame that would now burn her enemies. "All right, Mr. Finch," she said, her voice echoing softly in the vault. "Let's go finish my husband's work." The heavy silence of the vault was broken only by the distant rhythmic groan of the bridge above them, a sound like a sleeping giant's breath. Alara's hand rested on the cool metal of the crate, feeling the ghost of Cale's presence in the chill. The video screen was dark, but his final words, "Be the hunter I know you are," hung in the air, a charge as potent as the secrets in the drive. Alistair Finch watched her, his face an unreadable mask. He anticipated you would need time, but time is a luxury we may not have. The arrests in Atlanta will be a signal flare. The curators will know their pipeline through Vance Aeronautics is compromised. They will accelerate their search for the Codex and for you. Alara turned from the crate, her mind no longer reeling, but clicking into place with a cold, analytical precision she'd honed in library archives and forgotten manuscript rooms. Cale hadn't just left her a fortune, he'd left her a puzzle where the stakes were survival. How would they trace it here? They wouldn't, not directly. But Cale's movements in his final months were meticulous. He flew to London 3 times under the guise of medical consultations. Each trip was genuine. He saw specialists here, but he also visited this facility. If they have been watching his known contacts, his patterns, this warehouse, owned by a shell company he established years ago, could be on a list of curiosities. Now, with the Atlanta operation blown, they will start checking those curiosities with extreme prejudice. So we move it. It's not that simple, madam, Finch gestured to the crate. The Codex is immensely fragile. Improper handling could destroy it. More importantly, Cale's intention was not just to hide it, but to use it as bait in a controlled detonation. The trap is here, in this city. He wanted them to come for it, on his chosen ground. Then we prepare the ground, the words feeling foreign and yet inevitable on her tongue. What's on the drive, exactly? Finch tapped the laptop, bringing up a directory of encrypted files. A taxonomy of theft. Provenance forgeries, banking records from Liechtenstein and Cyprus, shipping manifests, correspondence, and identities. Not just foot soldiers, but the principals, the men and women who consider themselves the rightful inheritors of history's spoils. He looked at her. He was building a case, but not for a courtroom, for a war. The information is compartmentalized. He gave me the keys to certain sections, logistics, shell corporations, but the core file, the one containing the identities and locations of the top tier, it requires a second key, one only you would have. Alara's breath caught. The gardenia, the bridge, our anniversary? Possibly, Finch said, or something deeper. He spoke of you often in our meetings, not sentimentally, but operationally. He said your mind worked in patterns he could never predict, that you could see connections in chaos. He said that was the final safeguard. For the first time since the reading of the will, a flicker of something other than dread or determination sparked in Alara, a recognition. Cale hadn't seen her as a weak thing to be protected and secreted away. He had, in his own desperate, twisted way, seen her as an equal partner in this endgame. He had built the labyrinth, but he believed she could navigate it. "We can't stay here," she said decisively. "We need to secure the codex somewhere safer immediately, then decide how he used the drive. You said he intended a controlled detonation. How?" Alistair allowed a sliver of approval to show in his eyes. He established a protocol, a dead man's switch of sorts. If the data on the drive is accessed with the correct master key and then uploaded to a specific, secure server he configured, it doesn't just go to Interpol or the Art Crime Unit, it is simultaneously disseminated to 3 major financial regulatory bodies, the press offices of 5 international newspapers, and the private inboxes of the curator's biggest rivals in the black market antiquities world. It is designed to burn their network from the inside out, all at once. But the upload must be initiated from a specific hardwired terminal in a secure location, not from this laptop. Where? A private digital archive server room beneath the British Library. He financed its expansion 2 years ago. He has access, you have access as the benefactor.
Of course. He had brought her to a symposium there once, talking excitedly about preservation and access. She thought it was philanthropy. It was a tactical position. "Then that's our next move," Alara said. "We take the codex and the drive to the British Library. We secure the codex in their high-value holdings. They'll do it for a major donor, no questions asked. And we assess the terminal. We find the key." Finch nodded. "A sound strategy, but we must move with the assumption we are already observed." He moved to a wall of the vault, pressed a hidden panel, and revealed a small armory. Not guns, but tactical gear. He handed her a slim, black tactical vest. "Wear this under your coat. It's lightweight, stab-proof, and has an RFID scrambler. It won't stop a bullet, but it will make you a harder target to track electronically." Alara put it on without question, the material cool and constricting. She then carefully placed the ancient leather folio of the Arachne Codex into a specially designed, climate-controlled briefcase Finch produced and pocketed the USB drive. It felt like carrying a live nerve. They exited the vault not through the main warehouse, but via a narrow service stair that led to a discreet underground parking bay. A different car waited here, a nondescript black Jaguar XE. "Less conspicuous than the Bentley," Finch remarked as he took the wheel. The drive through London was tense. Every slowing car, every pedestrian looking their way felt like a threat. Alara watched the city stream by, the historic streets now feeling like a hostile chessboard. Cale had chosen the city not just for its institutions, but for its chaos, its layers, a perfect place to hide and to hunt. They pulled into a staff and delivery entrance at the British Library, bypassing the public queues. Finch showed a pass, spoke a quiet word to a security chief who gave Alara a curious but respectful nod. The benefactor's widow, another role to play. The server room was in a sub-baseline, a climate-controlled, humming space of blue lights and blinking racks. In a soundproofed glass annex sat a single, isolated terminal with no network connectivity except for one heavily encrypted physical line. "This is it, the air-gapped system. Insert the drive." Alara did so, the terminal whirred to life, prompting for a multi-factor authentication. Finch entered a long string of characters from a device on his keychain. The screen changed, showing a simple interface with a single field. "Final verification required. Input master key." Below the field, a hint. "The anchor in our storm." Alara stared at it. Their storm? The last 6 months of his illness? The secrecy?
Their entire marriage buffeted by his family. She thought of the painting, the bridge in the storm. An anchor holds a ship steady in a storm. She whispered, "Our honeymoon. We sailed in the Greek islands. That sudden squall off Mykonos. The anchor line snapped and we drifted for hours until the Coast Guard found us. It had been terrifying, but in the cabin, holding each other as the boat pitched, he'd whispered, 'You're my anchor, Alara. However bad this gets, you hold me fast.' She typed, 'You are my anchor.' Error. She closed her eyes, blocking out the hum of servers, thinking of the gardenia, the scent of memory. The anchor in our storm. Not hers. Theirs. He'd said something else, later when they were safe on shore, drinking brandy at a quayside tavern. The fear had turned to giddy relief. He'd raised his glass. "To us," he'd said, his eyes bright. "The only anchor we'll ever need." She typed, "The only anchor." The screen flashed green. Access granted. Final sequence initiated. Upload ready. Manual confirmation required in 10 minutes. A timer began counting down from 10 minutes. "He's giving us a window to abort," Finch murmured. "Once we confirm, there is no recalling the data. It will be everywhere in minutes." A sudden sharp alarm blared from Finch's phone, not a ringtone, but a piercing, urgent siren. He looked at the screen, his face hardening into granite. Motion sensors at the Shad Thames warehouse, tripped in multiple zones. They're inside. They found the vault. They'll know it was recently opened. "How long?" Alara asked, her voice calm. "To trace the access logs here? If they have a hacker of sufficient skill, perhaps 15 minutes, less if they're already watching the library." Alara looked at the timer. 9:47, 9:46. "They'll come here. They'll try to stop the upload or seize the drive." "Undoubtedly." "Can we defend this room?" "For a time, but they will not be gentle. They will burn this place down to stop that data from leaving." Finch looked at her. "The choice is yours, madam. Abort, and we can attempt to flee with a drive, go to ground. Confirm, and we ignite the war. We will have to survive the blast wave." Alara thought of Imogen and Serafina in handcuffs, their gilded world turned to prison bars. A just end, orchestrated by Kale. She thought of the laughing men in shadows who thought history, who had hounded her husband to his grave. She looked at the briefcase containing the Arachne Codex, knowledge almost lost to greed. She was not a victim. She was the inheritor, the hunter. Her finger hovered over the enter key to confirm the upload. "We're not going to wait for them," she said, a plan forming with crystalline clarity. "How many exits from the sublevel?" 2. The service elevator we took and a maintenance stair that led to a loading bay on the adjacent street. "Can you trigger a fire alarm, a general evacuation?" Finch smiled, a thin, dangerous smile. "Easily." "Do it. Then take the codex, get it into the high-security vault, use your authority. I'll take the drive." "Ilara, splitting up is the only way. They'll be looking for a pair or for a man protecting a woman. They'll be looking for this." She tapped the briefcase. "You're the obvious threat. I'm the archivist's widow. I hide in plain sight. I'll meet you at the fallback." Kale's letter mentioned one. "Finch will guide you." Finch hesitated, then gave a sharp nod. He accessed the terminal's panel, typed a command, and a low, whooping fire alarm immediately began to sound throughout the building. The hum of the servers was drowned by the klaxon. "The fallback is the Gardenia suite at the Lanesboro Hotel. It's held in your name. Go." He grabbed the briefcase and moved toward the service elevator. Alara yanked the drive from the terminal. The timer froze at 8:11. The upload was pending, waiting for the final command from any linked terminal once the sequence was reinitiated. She pocketed the drive and ran for the maintenance stair. Pushing open the heavy door, she was met with chaos in the loading bay. Library staff milled confusedly, drivers shouted. She melted into a group of evacuating researchers, keeping her head down, moving with the stream out into the crisp London afternoon. She had gone half a block when she saw them. 2 men, athletic with the careful eyes of predators, moving against the flow of evacuating people, heading straight for the library's service entrance. They hadn't seen her. Alara ducked into a small cafe, her heart hammering. She ordered a tea with shaking hands and sat by the window, watching. Within minutes, 3 black SUVs with tinted windows screeched to a halt outside the library's perimeter. More men poured out. The curators were here, and they were not subtle. Her phone, a new, clean one Finch had given her, buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Assets secured. Vault 7. Proceed. Be aware you are the primary target now. They have your photo from Atlanta Society pages. Of course they did. She was no longer invisible. Finishing her tea with forced calm, Alara left the cafe and walked, not toward the luxurious Lanesboro, but deeper into the warren of streets behind King's Cross. She needed to think, to be unpredictable. Cale had said she saw patterns in chaos. The pattern now was clear. They were hunters, and she was the quarry, but a quarry that knew the terrain her mate had prepared. She found a quiet square, sat on a bench, and took out the USB drive. It was a tiny, black rectangle of pure consequence. She thought of the master key, the only anchor. It wasn't just a password, it was Cale's confession. In the end, his work, his war, his entire double life had been anchored to her, to the idea of her safety, her future. A shadow fell across her. A man sat down on the far end of the bench. He was older, with a refined academic bearing, and wore a beautiful cashmere coat. He didn't look at her. "Mrs. Vance," he said, his voice cultured, faintly European. "A pleasure, finally. My associates are rather brutish. They tend to break things. I prefer conversation." Alara's blood turned to ice, but she didn't move. "Do you have a name?" "You may call me Mr. Erebus. A classical reference to shadow. Appropriate, don't you think?" He finally turned his head. His eyes were pale gray, intelligent and utterly devoid of warmth. "Your husband was a remarkable thief. He took something that did not belong to him. We would like it back. The codex and the digital folio he was compiling." "And if I refuse?" "Then the unfortunate tragedy that befell your husband, a sick man, alone, making poor decisions, will befall his lovely widow. A mugging gone wrong, a fall onto the tube tracks. London can be so dangerous." He smiled. "Or you give us what is ours, and you walk away to enjoy the considerable liquid funds Cale undoubtedly hid for you. A simple transaction." Alara saw the 2 brutish associates now, standing at the entrance to the square, blocking it. She was trapped on the bench. "The codex is in a secure archive," she said truthfully. "You'll never get it. We will dismantle the archive brick by brick if we must, but you can save everyone the trouble. And the drive, we know it's on you. The scrambler in your vest is good, but we have better. We pinged it the moment you left the library's Faraday cage." So that was how they found her. Not skill, but superior tech. "The drive is useless without the keys," Alara bluffed. "We have people who specialize in unlocking things. It may take time, but we have it, unlike you." Erebus extended a gloved hand. "Please." Alara's mind raced. This was the moment. The hunter was in the snare. But Cale's snare was meant to be sprung from a position of control, not from a park bench. She thought of the terminal, the pending upload. It needed the drive to be reinserted and the sequence confirmed. But the sequence was already authenticated with the master key. Was there another way? Look to the bridge. The terminal was physical, hardwired, but the system had been accessed. What if the upload wasn't a single command, but a state? What if by authenticating and initiating, she had already armed the bomb, and the final confirmation was just the button? Erebus's hand remained outstretched. His men began to walk slowly toward the bench. There was no more time. Alara stood up, not to hand over the drive, but to face Erebus. "My husband's last words to me were, 'Be the hunter.'" She pulled the USB drive from her pocket, holding it up between her thumb and forefinger. "He didn't build a vault to hide this. He built a trigger." Before Erebus could react, she threw the drive, not at him, but over his head in a high, glinting arc toward the central fountain of the square. "Get it!" Erebus barked, his composure shattering. His 2 men lunged for the fountain. Alara didn't wait. She ran in the opposite direction toward a narrow alley she'd spotted earlier. A shout, the sound of splashing water, then a curse. She didn't look back. She ran until her lungs burned, weaving through streets, finally hailing a black cab. "The Lanesboro Hotel, please." As the cab pulled away, she saw one of the black SUVs screech around a corner far behind, then lose her in traffic. The Gardenia suite was an oasis of stunned silence. Finch was waiting, his tension palpable until she entered. "They found you." "A man named Erebus. They tracked the drive. I threw it into a fountain." "You what?" His eyes widened. "I threw it into a fountain. It was the only move. They would have taken it. This way they have to fish for it, buy us time." "But the upload was initiated," Alara said, pacing. "The terminal authenticated us. The timer was running. Is the system designed to assume a catastrophic interruption, or does it need that final confirm?" Finch stared at her, then rushed to a sleek laptop on the desk. His fingers flew across the keyboard, accessing a remote monitoring portal. He swore softly. "The system shows sequence initiated. Status, awaiting final handshake. It's in a queue. If the drive is not reconnected to an authorized terminal within 24 hours, the sequence purges, a security measure to prevent exactly this, the data being extracted under duress." So she had bought a day, not a victory, just a stay of execution. Her phone buzzed, a video message from an unknown number. She opened it. The scene was the quiet square. Mr. Erebus stood by the fountain, holding the dripping USB drive. He looked directly into the camera, his gray eyes chilling. "A spirited attempt, Mrs. Vance. Naive, but spirited. We have it, and we have specialists already working on it. Your 24-hour grace period is now ours. You have one last chance to be reasonable. Bring us the Arachne Codex. Meet me at midnight at the heart of the bridge he loved so much, Tower Bridge. Come alone. If you involve authorities, or if Mr. Finch tags along, we will not just kill you, we will erase Cale Vance's entire legacy. We will burn his name from every record, and we will make sure the world remembers him only as the thief who died a failure. You have until the lights go out on the bridge." The video ended.
Finch's face was grim. "It's a trap. They'll kill you the moment they have the codex." "I know," Alara said, her voice quiet. She walked to the window, looking out at the glittering London skyline. The bridge was out there, waiting. But he's right about one thing. This ends at the bridge. It's where Cale pointed me from the start. "It's suicide." "No," Alara said, turning to face him, a strange calm settling over her. "It's the final move. He said to look to the bridge, not just the painting. The actual bridge. Cale didn't just leave clues for me, he left a weapon in the bridge." Finch frowned. "What do you mean?" "The warehouse was under the bridge. The painting was of the bridge. The final meeting is on the bridge. It's the center of his web." Her mind, seeing patterns in chaos, raced. The terminal at the library was the trigger. But what if there's a backup trigger, a physical one, wired into the very structure he was so obsessed with? What if the upload can be completed from there? "It's possible," Finch admitted slowly. "He was meticulous. Redundancy was his creed. But we have no schematics, no way of knowing." "We don't need schematics," Alara said, a fierce light in her eyes. "We have the bait, and we have the hunter's instinct. He wants the codex. We'll give him a codex." An hour later, in a locked room of the suite, with materials Finch procured from sources he wouldn't name, they worked. Using high-resolution photographs from Finch's files of the genuine Arachne Codex, a replica of the ancient leather folio, and aged paper, Alara, with her archivist's knowledge of materials and deterioration, began to create a forgery.
It wouldn't withstand expert scrutiny, but in the dark, on a bridge at midnight, it would pass. As she carefully applied a mixture of tea and ash to simulate age stains, she spoke. "When we're on the bridge, you need to be elsewhere, at the library." "I will not leave you alone with them, madam." "You must. The moment you see us meet on the bridge walkway, you go to the terminal. You reinsert the drive." She handed him a small, sealed envelope. "This contains the master key, the only anchor. Use it. Complete the upload. That is how you protect me, by burning their world down while they're distracted with me." Finch took the envelope, his expression of profound respect. "He chose well," he said, simply. Midnight. The Thames was a black ribbon stitched with reflections of the city's gold. Tower Bridge, lit up against the night sky, was a colossal silhouette of Victorian grandeur. The pedestrian walkways were closed for the night, but Alara knew Erebus would have arranged access. She wore a dark coat, the fake codex in a satchel slung across her body. Her heart was a steady drum of purpose, not fear. A small door in the base of the North Tower opened. A man gestured her inside. She was led up a narrow, spiraling stone staircase, emerging onto the high-level walkway that connected the two towers. It was empty, a long, glass-floored gallery suspended over the abyss of the river and the road below. The city lights spread out in both directions. Mr. Erebus stood in the center, flanked by 4 men. He held the damp USB drive. "Mrs. Vance, the codex, please." "How do I know you won't kill me anyway?" "You don't, but it's the only chance you have." He smiled. "The drive is proving resilient, but we will break it. Your husband's digital ghost will be exorcised. The physical original, however, is non-negotiable." Alara slowly took the satchel from her shoulder, holding it out. One of the men stepped forward to take it. At that moment, all the lights on the bridge, the spectacular white illumination that outlined its structure, suddenly died, plunging the walkway into near darkness, lit only by the ambient city glow. Erebus started. "What is this?" Alara knew. It was Finch, a diversion, or part of the plan. "Look to the bridge," Alara whispered. In the sudden dark, her eyes caught what was hidden in the light. Etched faintly into the metal framework of the walkway's support beam beside her were a series of numbers and letters, barely visible. Coordinates? A code? Cale had been here. He had left a mark. Erebus recovered, snatching the satchel from his man. Opening it, he pulled out the folio, examined it in the dim light. His face contorted in rage. "This is a fake." He threw it to the floor. "You dare?" "I dare," Alara said, backing away towards the etched beam. My husband dared to steal from you. I dare to destroy you." "Kill her," Erebus snarled. The men lunged. Alara's hand found the etching on the cold steel. It wasn't a code. It was a button, cleverly disguised. A final, physical failsafe. She pressed it. Nothing happened. No sirens, no lights. One of the men grabbed Alara's arm, yanking her backward. Then a low, powerful vibration hummed through the entire bridge structure, a subsonic thrum felt in the bones. Across London, in the British Library's sub-basement, Alastair Finch saw the terminal screen flash. Handshake received. Final sequence confirmed. Upload commencing. On the bridge walkway, Erebus's phone began to vibrate, then scream with alert after alert. He stared at it, his face draining of blood. "No, it's not possible. The drive is here." "The bridge was the antenna," Alara shouted over the growing hum. "The trigger was always here." Panic broke the professionalism of his men. One shouted, "The server! Our internal network is flooding with the data. It's everywhere." Erebus turned eyes of pure hatred on Alara. He pulled a pistol from his coat. "You ruinous bitch." A shot rang out, shockingly loud in the enclosed space. But it wasn't from Erebus's gun. The man holding Alara crumpled. From the shadowed entrance of the South Tower, Alastair Finch stepped into the gloom, with a pistol held steady in his hand. "I told you I wouldn't leave you alone," he said. Chaos erupted. Gunfire sparked in the dark. Alara dropped to the floor, crawling behind a structural pillar. She saw Erebus, ignoring the fight, frantically trying to smash the USB drive with the heel of his shoe, as if that could stop the digital avalanche now roaring through the veins of his organization. It was too late. Kale's virus was in the bloodstream. By morning, bank accounts would be frozen, assets seized, identities splashed across front pages. The curators were finished. Finch expertly dispatched 2 more men. The last one fled down the staircase. Erebus, realizing the scale of the catastrophe, gave Alara one last venomous look, then turned and ran after his man. Silence descended, broken only by the moan of the wind in the wires and the distant sirens now converging at the bridge, police responding to reports of gunfire. Finch helped Alara to her feet. "Are you hurt?" "No." She looked at the fake codex, trampled on the floor, then out at the awakening city. "It's done?" "It's done," Finch confirmed. "The upload is complete and propagating. The trap has sprung." They made their way down as police swarmed the towers. Finch handled the authorities with a dizzying array of credentials and a story about interrupting an attempted art theft. Alara, the shaken beneficiary, was questioned gently and released.
Dawn found them back in the Mayfair townhouse. The news was already breaking on financial channels and online news sites. Major international art fraud ring unmasked, data dump exposes looted antiquities network, and Vance Aeronautics tied to massive money laundering scheme. On the screen, a reporter stood outside a lavish Geneva villa, police hauling out crates. Among those named in the astonishing data leak is renowned collector and philanthropist Gustav Reinhardt. Mr. Erebus had a name, and it was now mud. Alara felt no triumph, only a deep, weary emptiness. Kale was avenged, his work completed, but he was still gone. A week later, the legal storm had only begun. Imogen and Serafina, facing decades in prison, tried repeatedly to contact Alara, their messages shifting from threats to pleading. She blocked the numbers. Their fate was no longer her concern. She stood with Finch in the high-security vault of the British Library before the genuine Arachne Codex, now officially accessioned and destined for a future, carefully curated exhibition. "What will you do now, madam?" Finch asked. Alara looked at the ancient text, then at the man who had been her guide through the shadows. "Tale left me more than a company or a fortune. He left me a network, a purpose. Elysian Ventures has legitimate fronts, art recovery, historical preservation. I think I'd like to run it, for real, turn it into what he pretended it was, to recover what's lost." She paused. "I'll need a managing director, one who understands the shadows." Finch gave a small, formal bow. "It would be an honor, Mrs. Vance." Epilogue. 3 months later. A small, private ceremony was held in a quiet corner of Highgate Cemetery. Kale's true headstone was simple, giving only his name and dates, no mention of Vance Aeronautics. Beneath the epitaph, at Alara's request, was a single engraved gardenia. As she placed a white gardenia on the grave, the scent filled the air, a memory trigger. She no longer felt like the woman who had been thrown into the rain. She was someone else, Alara Vance, head of Elysian Ventures, a quiet force in the world of restitution. She had been the bait, the victim, the heir. Now she was the keeper of the flame and the hunter her husband had known she could be. The betrayal had been the first move in a game she hadn't known they were playing, and she had, in the end, won. She turned from the grave, pulled her coat tight against the London chill, and walked toward the waiting car, where Alistair Finch stood, holding the door open. The game was over. The work, however, was just beginning.